I am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. This valuable time is for you to pause in your day and go on your own self-journey. Discover the beliefs that are holding you back from living your best life at work and at home. Learn from the guests on this show as they share their inspirational stories on how they found ways to break internal beliefs that were no longer serving them. Because if you believe you can, you will. And our podcast begins now. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Michael Mazza. He is currently a shareholder at Detweiler, Hershey Associates PC, and serves as the partner in charge of the Cass area as well as the firm's payroll company. Previously, he was the firm's tax manager. Along with helping clients navigate through complex tax issues, he spends time serving as a fractional CFO to clients. In that role, he helps clients understand and learn how the financial information impacts their businesses. In his spare time, he enjoys running, biking, and golfing, and is married with 2 children. During this interview, we discussed Michael's career and his path in the accounting profession. We focused on his journey to bring his vision to reality by sharing it with his partners and team. Learn how he's navigated change and what his insights have been to keep growing as a practice and as a partner. The journey is never over. Each new milestone he hits creates the next goal. This episode was live at Scaling New Heights and sponsored by Giraffe. Giraffe drives efficient growth in your accounting and finance practice with its all-in-one forecasting, budgeting, reporting, and dashboard solution. Giraffe automates financial planning and analysis and empowers firms to triple their advisory revenue by integrating general ledger, workforce, and non-financial data. As a preferred solution provider of CPA.com, Giraffe is trusted by over 4,000 businesses and firms, thanks to their exceptional platform, training, and support. I think you were going to learn so much from Michael during this episode. He was so vulnerable and transparent, and I can tell you it was great to record this live and be able to have the audience ask him questions and even the discussion that later followed. So I hope that you will share this episode with maybe your colleagues or fellow partners or other people that you are working with to drive change, and realize that you are not alone, that everybody goes through this process, and the more we can share with each other, the better it will be for everyone. To us from Philadelphia. He is a practice that has gone through transformation, and we are going to talk about his story this morning. Before we get started, we are live at Scaling New Heights. Anyone joining us live online. And so we've got a few housekeeping things to do for the people in the room. To get started, making sure you scan your badge for CPE. If you are getting CPE for this session, you can do it outside of here. Also, for those of you in the room, we are going to have a talk with Michael first, and then open it up for questions, talk show style. But if you don't want the microphone coming at you, a great place to put your questions is to scan this QR code, and you'll be able to ask questions through the QR code as well. And I will get your questions up here that I can ask Michael, or you can give your feedback and your stories as well. For those of you online, you can scan that QR code as well and ask your questions, or put them right in your comments section on social and be able to ask your questions as well. But would love for all of you in the room to participate live too, so don't feel like you have to do it in the app. We'll have a microphone coming around for those of you that want to ask questions of Michael as we go through today's session. So we'll put that QR code up again later, but I want to get to the important part, and that is interviewing Michael. So thank you, Michael, for coming today. I want to first thank Giraffe for sponsoring the session. this morning, and really wanting to elevate these stories of transformation that we go through. A lot of us talk about what it means to do innovation. We learn about all these new tools, but we don't necessarily understand the pain that we have to go through to get the wins. And so we're going to have a very vulnerable conversation about today. But the purpose of this podcast is to really understand when we go through innovation, when we go through change, what are those belief systems that we carry throughout our lives that might be for ourselves as leaders, but also in the way of others that are trying to help us with that transformation too. So, Michael, before we get started, can you give a little background on yourself and your firm and just where you came from as far as getting started and trying to do your firm transformation?
Sure. So thank you for having me, Amy. I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity. So I'm a partner at Detweiler Hershey. We are a firm of about 20 people. We're located about 40 minutes north of Philadelphia. So my main area is leading up our CAS practice as well as our tax practice. Our firm has been in existence for 75 years, so we're on the third generation of a partner group. So definitely a firm that's been in place for quite a while, and what I would call your traditional accounting firm. We do a little bit of everything, financial statements, tax. The CAS area is a new area for us. Business valuation. So, your traditional accounting firm in the sense of services offered to clients.
Awesome. So thanks so much for joining us this morning. One of the things that I would like to talk about first is just your background and where you grew up. What did your parents do for a living? Just take us back to the beginning.
Sure. So I grew up in a small town, northeastern Pennsylvania. Not too big. Graduating high school class was 80 people, so pretty small town. I went to college at Penn State. My parents were both kind of in the financial industry. My mom worked as a contract analyst at the Navy Depot for the last 15 years before she retired. And my dad was a CPA. On the internal audit side, he worked for the state of Pennsylvania for many years on the public utility side, auditing public utilities. So had a background, both parents had a background in the finance area, obviously one a CPA.
So when you were growing up, were you involved at all, like going to their workplace, getting the things that
Not much, no. I mean, I would hear a little bit about my dad. He would travel all over the state to audit the Public Utilities Commission. Never really interested me. I was, that quintessential kid who was going to do something completely different than their parents. My dad also went to Penn State. I always told myself I wouldn't go to Penn State, and I ended up at Penn State. So, one of those. Didn't really know exactly what he did. Tried to steer myself in a different direction, but ultimately ended up here.
So what did you want to be when you grew up?
I originally went to college to be a chemical engineer, but that kind of faded very quickly. It just didn't seem to interest me. So I switched to economics and accounting, which did start to kind of drive me in that accounting way. But it wasn't until the end of college that I really realized that I was probably going to go into that field. It was more of a necessity to get a job than to actually find the long-term career.
So, as far as mechanical engineering, was it because you were good at math, or why did you go down the path of mechanical engineering?
So growing up, I was always good at math. It was always one of those subjects that didn't seem to challenge me too much. And people would tell you, "Hey, you're good at math. You should be an accountant." But what I found is that it wasn't really the math part that really interested me. It was more of the critical thinking, which is where kind of this journey to CAS has led me a little bit outside of the traditional accounting style.
Well, can I just ask who those people into accounting? It's just people that come along in our lives that kind of give these little clues or whispers of opening our eyes.
I lost you there. Sorry.
What did you say, Michael?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? You
Yeah.
fell out there.
So, who told you that you should go into accounting? Who gave you that suggestion?
So I had some professors in college
Ooh.
who, kind of in there finally. But it was really when I did my internship during college, I worked at a small accounting firm, a very small accounting firm. The environment was great to work at, and those people at that firm kind of led me down that path to say, this might be something you want to do going forward. At that time, I was still quite undecided on what I was going to do, but it was probably the people that I worked with on my internship that really kind of showed me what I could do, what accounting really is, and how it kind of intertwines with not only the math side of things, but also kind of the people side of things.
Yeah, I think that's so important, and also just us educating the world about our profession. And I love that you said about solving problems, because so many people will say because you're good at math, that's why you become an accountant. But there's just this belief system out there of that's what we do, is just turn numbers instead of this problem solving.
Mhm.
And so you went down this path of engineering, really realizing later that you could be doing that kind of problem solving in accounting. So what opened your eyes to that?
I think it was just some of the situations that I had early on in my career. So you go to college, and I think you take this major of accounting, but I don't know that you ever actually practically trained in what you're going to encounter in the accounting field. And you can go into both public and private. So there's many different avenues to go into. But I think it was finally sitting down and realizing, what do we actually do as accountants? And early on in your career, you're just trying to do as much work as you possibly can, because the model of our traditional accounting firm is the harder you work, the more you succeed. And so, you're just kind of, your eyes are opening to all these different situations. And it was just interacting with clients that really got my eyes open to say, yeah, we have to use math, but most of our day is not spent using math. I mean, and if we are using math, it's basic math. It's really the psychology of working with clients. It's the understanding of what each client needs and how you transform the way you deliver that service.
I love that you called it psychology of what each client needs. Who teaches us psychology when we're going to school? And
Right.
how many issues are we actually dealing with and doing accounting therapy with so many of our clients? So, there's this, again, you bring up another belief system of how many hours you work means how successful that you are in a traditional firm. What in your head decided, like, we need to break that, or we need to change that perspective?
I think it was as I started to continue to progress in this profession, and so our profession to me is a very interesting one. We graduate college and we get a job, and the goal is to work hard and work a lot of hours. Especially in public accounting, we have busy season, and often it's a badge of honor to work as many hours as you can, or service as many clients, and that's the way you progress, right? And so then you move to the next level, and then you become somewhat of a salesperson, which you're never really trained for. To get more business, you have to sell, and to progress in this career, you have to get more business and develop it. And then ultimately, when you make it to the partner level, you now have to be a leader. And again, not a whole lot is taught to you throughout on those skills, being a salesperson, being a leader. So it was as I was progressing through those steps that I really realized that some of our old models in the accounting industry, they still have validity, but they're not relevant to every area of our firm. And so I think our industry, and even our firm being 75 years old, has had a hard time breaking through some of those, the quintessential hours goal, and the, take on any client, and more revenue is better revenue. I started to kind of look at it from an outside view looking in. If I were a customer, what would I want from an accounting firm? And also, what do my people here at the office, what are my next generation of leaders looking for? Because when I started accounting, my mindset was probably very different than what the younger generation is looking for today. And so we have to transform the way we offer those services and the way we build our firms to let those people thrive.
So, in your firm, you said it's 75 years old.
Mhm.
What services were you traditionally doing in your firm when you were starting there and as you were progressing in your own career?
So we do what I would call traditional. So we were doing audits and financial statements, tax and tax planning, some business valuation. We have a payroll company. So we try to be quite wide in our service offering. We try to find the right clients, but at the end of the day, I think growth was always a main factor. And so those services lent themselves to growth. And so rather than trying to identify the best clients that we could bring on, oftentimes we probably brought on clients that kind of fit the need at the time.
So, what made you decide that you wanted to change from those traditional services and start transforming and building a client advisory services practice?
It was really the learning kind of what the client advisory services practice did and how we had kind of we realized that we were already doing a lot of those services. And so, but we were doing them in a way that wasn't standardized. So a client would call and they would be in need of something, and we would find out a way to do it. For me personally, I had a fairly large client whose controller decided to leave without giving any notice. They called us up and they said, "Hey, we really need somebody to fill in. Can you come fill in for 3 days a week?" And so I went in and did that service. Um, and just kind of seeing how you can be impactful to a client started making me think, this is a service that we can offer regularly. And the way that our accounting industry is looking, tax returns are always going to be there. I look at those as a transactional service, though. We're not bringing a whole lot of value to a client long term if we're just doing those transactional services. And so looking back and saying to ourselves, what services can we provide to clients that are value add? The client advisory services really stood out. And it was something that I was passionate about from doing with other clients and realizing that that was giving me purpose and joy when I was working rather than just doing another tax return.
So it's giving you purpose and joy. You're finding your way, through what kind of work you want to do and be leading up for the practice. How do you convince your partners
Mm.
that this is work that you should start offering?
So that's been a tough one. I'm the youngest partner here at the office. We have three partners, and we're all in 10-year generational differences. And so I think at the end of the day, as a partner group, we want what's best for the firm. We want what's best for our employees. But it's not easy to transition to a new way of thinking, especially when most of our employees at this office have been here for more than 10 years. So we don't have a continuous amount of turnover. The partners have been here for quite some time. So trying to get them to understand has been more proof of concept than anything. So what we've done is we've started to roll it out with what we would call friendly clients. So clients that were already looking for those services or may not know that they were looking for them, but fit the service line very well. And we've rolled it out slowly to them to show the partner group and then the rest of the firm that this is a service that can be offered if we do it in the right way with the right tools and the right partners, that it will work for clients. It won't work for all clients though. And that's one of the things that's been hard to kind of adjust with people is that these are services and these are clients that fit a certain mold and they can't be done on every client. We've had a couple instances since we've started this service line where people have tried to bring clients in and try to put them into this service line. And we've had to say, that doesn't fit the client that we're looking for this service. And those conversations have been difficult, but I think the way that we've done it is just to continue to show that it will work. Obviously, there's bumps in the road. We hit walls all the time in this service line, but we've just kind of tried to keep moving forward with it to show that it will work.
So what are those things that you've bumped into? So, and this can be staff, this can be partners, like we're trying to convince
Yep.
everyone that this is the right way to go. So how did you first approach it, and what things worked and what things didn't work?
Sure. So we've had lots. I mean, at every turn, we probably hit a bump in the road. And one of the mindsets that we had when we walked into this was realizing that we were going to fail. Along the lines, there was going to be failure, but it wasn't going to be complete failure. It was just going to be somewhat experimentation. So if it didn't work in one way, we would transition and try to retool it to work in a different way. We've had staffing issues. So one of the things, like I mentioned, we've been doing these services in our office for the last couple of years in very different ways. So each person who was performing those services had a different way of doing it. And so what we had to do was try to standardize the service line, standardize the way that we interacted with clients, the onboarding experience, the client experience. And we run into some hiccups there because people tend to fall into their normal patterns, right? And so one of the issues we had was during busy season. We set out on this journey about 6 months before busy season started this year. And we knew that busy season was going to be kind of a tough point because people would fall back into their normal habits. And we had to really work through that to make sure that we were continuing to service the way that we were wanting to while other things were going on in the office. The other thing that we run into recently is that we worked with a lot of what I call friendly clients. So clients that were ready for these services, clients that were accepting of them or looking for them. The next step that we've got to get over is how do we message this to other customers that might not be in our firm, right? We grow very organically in our firm. And so that's perfectly wonderful, except there's a point where this service line needs to be brought out further. And so we're trying to figure out the messaging and work with our partners to figure out how do we message this the right way? How do we go to market? And how do we make this more of a product line and service line that we offer rather than just a service that gets offered to clients when they ask for it?
So there's a couple things that you said that I just want to go back to for a second. And, one thing is you said no one teaches us leadership,
Mhm.
right? So we get taught the technical skills, we're moving through our career, but we're not necessarily taught the leadership skills to nurture people through this kind of process. And a lot of things that are important as far as leadership is we're nurturing people one by one because not everybody is the same. A lot of times we try to push this change one to many, which we're telling everybody this is the path we're going, but we aren't necessarily thinking about what is each individual's person heel in the sand that's causing them to be like, oh, this is fear. And it can be that I'm not going to be good enough, that I was good at what I did before, or how am I going to get to the next stage, or will I be left behind? All of those things. And also, even from the partner side, them feeling like this isn't a service that I have done before. So, how did you nurture these people when you said, I expected them to go back to their old habits?
Mhm.
What did you do to help nurture them to get them back on the path?
So we have been using employees currently who are also performing. We have people who are using, doing traditional services and CAS services. So one of the things that we've tried to do is make sure that we meet monthly, the group, to go over kind of where they are with their other schedules and where they are with their CAS schedules, as well as kind of having an overall understanding of what is it that they want this service line to look like. So we always need an architect, right? And so what I've tried to do is serve as that architect for this group. But at the end of the day, the group is only as good as the people who are working in it. And if it's something that I want to do, doesn't mean it's something that they want to do. And if they're not involved in it and they're not enjoying it and they're not feeling the purpose of doing it, then it's really not going to succeed. So we've tried to give each individual in the group a say in what they want to do. So for instance, we have one person in our group who does some work with clients, but really loves to kind of get involved in the technology side of things. So what I tasked that person with was finding us an FP&A software that would work for this service line to do a service and do a product that was very different different or unique from what we could just offer, using the normal tools that you would offer in this service. Another employee really likes working with our staff, and so we put her in charge of operations. So she's basically kind of making sure that everybody's schedule is coordinated the right way, making sure that the people are getting the right experiences. And so we've tried to make each individual find their purpose in this group.
Yeah, I love that so much that you went to each person and said, what makes you most excited? And I think this is a belief system that we have to break in the profession, right? Because we name each role the same role. So we'll say you're a bookkeeper, you're associate, you're a manager, you're a senior manager, and we give the same job responsibilities to every single person. But that's not necessarily where they're best suited. That's not necessarily where they're fine. And when we actually talk to each person and say, what makes you most excited about the work you do, what you just heard was some people like people and some people want to be in the technology, right? And not to actually have an opinion one way or the other that one is worse or one is better, that you bring the best skills out of each person so that you can achieve what you want in the end, which is a really different way of thinking. And actually, I interviewed Martin from Giraffe on a different podcast a few months ago, and that was something that they did at Giraffe as well, is to ask people what is it that you're most excited about as well, so that your career is aligned with those things that you love. So what have you seen happen since you've kind of shifted things with the people in your group?
So some people have taken to it well, and I think some people are still trying to break out of that mold, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had some who've really embraced it. The individual who we tasked with the technology side of things, he was very excited. He went out and found a product that we use, and that it is Giraffe that we use. But that was something that he was really passionate about. I took that completely off my plate and let him run with that. Some people have really tried, they've had trouble breaking out of that traditional mold. And we've had kind of the instance where this service has fallen to the bottom of their list because they have to get done the other things that they're doing. And so it's not easy to break out of this. It's sometimes easier for maybe somebody like myself who's in a leadership position to kind of transformatively change my thinking. But to have employees or staff or people who have been here for many years change their thinking, it's not easy. And again, like you brought up, we have a partner group, right? And so if everybody is not changing their thinking all at the same time, the staff then have to understand, which partner do I need to change for, or which partner do I have to have certain behaviors for when I'm doing their work. And that's really difficult. I think that's really difficult on the staff to try to figure out what person do I have to be today when I'm working for a different partner. And that's one of the things we've tried to really change in our firm, is to have a uniform message, a uniform set of core values, a uniform purpose, so that we don't all have to do the same thing, but we all have to be effectively moving in the same direction.
Yeah, I love that. And one thing that reminded me of this past weekend, I was listening to a podcast and they were basically saying, think of how hard it is to change yourself when you're trying to change other people. So we have to have that same kind of patience when we know, like, we're trying to change a habit in ourselves, and over time to be able to shift that habit and to be able to help others in order to change their habits as well, or be able to achieve the vision that they have. So maybe you can give me some examples of some clients that you now are doing very different services for, and you've moved into not only client advisory services, but CFO and controllership services. And we, Michael's been in a number of my courses with me. And, a lot of times we say we're going to do CFO services or controllership services, but it is CFO and controllership services are two very different services. And sometimes we're saying we're doing CFO services when it's actually controllership services. So do you want to talk about some examples of what you've been able to do now?
Yeah, so we started in earnest working on this probably 6 or 8 months ago. And at the time, like I said, we had some friendly clients. So I had one client who was ready for a fractional CFO, and that's what they were looking for. We've been working with them for almost 12 months now. And what we found in this process is that while they may call it fractional CFO services, we identify it more as controller services. And so what I mean by that is we're doing a lot more of the in the weeds kind of work with them that we shouldn't be doing. And so we just kind of, me personally, just in the last probably month, realized that we have to make a dissemination between what controller services are and what fractional CFO services are, because typically we have a lot of scope creep where we get into an engagement and we do some of those things. And I think what happens with a client is just because we can do it doesn't mean we should do it.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to find ways, better ways to communicate that to the client or scope the project better. We have other clients that we're working with where we do start at the controller level. But what I realize is that whatever level I think we're starting at, we're probably starting one level below that. Because while the client is identifying it or what we're identifying it as that, I think that to get in there and start working, we always go one level below. And the challenge for us is not getting stuck at that level. And it's been a big challenge.
Yeah, so a lot of times we have to come in at a different phase to get it under control, but then take it to the level. And so again, when we talk about we can do it versus do we have to do it, this has been coming up a lot when I've been going around to conferences is the spreadsheet versus automation.
Mhm.
So what we can do is calculate everything manually on a spreadsheet. And when we talk about belief systems, this is a really hard belief system to break because as accountants, we've always measured our value on time and how long it's taken us on a spreadsheet and so forth. But then we have tools that can actually get us the answer within minutes, hours, days, which would have taken us weeks or months. And then we've got to break the belief system that this is an hourly charge versus a value of our time. And so I want to just talk a little bit about this automation of transforming this process from spreadsheets into an automated tool like Giraffe to be able to offer CFO services.
So when we set out on this, one of the main goals that I had was not pricing by the hour, and trying to do away with the hourly pricing model, even from a measuring standpoint of how do I price this. So we came up with packages, so price ranges for these packages. And what we were trying to do there was try to get away from the thought process of the more hours we put in, the better the work is. And that lended itself to finding us a product that would do all the reporting, the dashboarding, and really the FP&A services. So what we weren't having in our practice was FP&A services. So the concept of getting clients' data in a more foresight looking, forward looking progress rather than backwards. So when we were doing these services, we were doing a lot of reporting back to them. Here's your previous month. It was great. They need that information. But for us to be unique and different and do a service that was going to be valuable to the client, we realized that we had to be able to give them information and connect information together in a way that they couldn't do with the systems that they had. And so we've partnered with Giraffe to use their product. And it has been nothing short of amazing for us from the learning standpoint, the value that's delivered to the client for them to see forecasts and budgets and understand things in a way that aren't just black and white on the page numbers. And I think too often that's what a client is looking for when they look for these services is how can you deliver information to me in a way that I can't deliver it to myself already. I mean, if they have their accounting package, they can print out their profit and loss statement, they can print out their cash flow statement, but it's the story that we tell and the usage of tools that we have to tell those stories. And what I found with Giraffe is not only are we able to use all of those things, but the support that they provided us from a practice standpoint has been unbelievable. We have worked with them on our go-to-market strategy. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that our FP&A software platform was going to help us figure out how to go to market and market this product and service line in that way. So it's just been fantastic, and that was one of the main goals, was trying to do this with partners, yourself, Giraffe, everybody that we kind of work with, because there was no reason for us to try to reinvent the wheel that was already kind of there. It was just making the service line unique to us. So using tools that, but using it in a way that we were going to deliver the product in our way.
Awesome. We have some questions in the app, but I would love to take some questions from the audience as well. And I think we have a microphone, a microphone that we can throw.
Accurate.
So anyone have questions for Michael? We've got a question over here, and I'm going to turn the camera so Michael can see.
Thank you so much. Okay, is this on?
Yeah.
Okay, so Michael, I have a question. When you have these partners that have been in there for many years and you start implementing this new software, how do you make sure they actually implement it correctly or are utilizing it correctly? Or if they don't, how do you handle that if they're not even utilizing it to the point that you want your staff to utilize it?
So we have been very diligent about who gets to use the software. And so we've created a team of users, and Giraffe was great about kind of giving us the kind of roadmap of what people should be involved in these service lines and what people should be using the software. So one of the things we wanted to make sure was that we weren't just setting it free for everybody to be users of, because it's a type of software that you really have to understand how to use and learn. And so we didn't want to task everybody with learning. And we've too often put softwares in place in our firm where everybody gets the training, and it's a very shallow training, and they learn a little bit about it, and maybe they use the product, maybe they don't. I'm sure in many firms out there, it's the same situation where we have all these different types of technology, and some get used and some don't. So we've been very diligent about who gets to use it, when they use it, how it's getting used, how it fits into the service line. And for those partners who are kind of on the outside looking in, we've just tried to educate them and show them at every turn what capabilities it has, how we're using it with clients, and just kind of at our monthly staff meetings, just give a general overview of the things that it can do, so that if they find an instance where they may have the opportunity to sell the service to a client, they're aware of how it's being used and what capabilities it has, and also what services we are not trying to offer in this service line as well.
Yeah, so were you surprised to see how many people were in here, Michael? Yeah, that's really helpful. And I think what's important too about tech stack is that sometimes we think everybody needs to be using all the software, and it goes back to what he said in the beginning, is finding what each person's excited about and letting them be the subject matter expert on that. So that was a great answer. Anyone else have questions? Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Look at how nicely we're throwing the microphone. We're
So
handing
cute.
it off. Yes.
So, Michael, I have a question around spreadsheets versus automation.
Mhm.
You know, my folks are are Excel ninjas, and telling them that, you know what, you need to let go of Excel and Power BI to move to something different is going to be a lot of trouble for me. So how do I deal with that?
So I would tell you not to, I don't think it has to be an either or. I think it can be a both. So I think there's usage for both products. Recently, I just took a CFO mastermind class with Amy and another gentleman, and he was very into using spreadsheets and kind of creating a package that can be used for multiple clients. I see usage for both of them. What I found with Giraffe is that it provides us the ability to do things that in a spreadsheet, for me personally, they can be done, but they take much longer to do. One of the things that was amazing to me was, in their software, when you do a forecast, we can all do a forecast in Excel. It can get pretty sophisticated with formulas and linkage and everything, and it's only as good as the formulas. But what I found to be amazing in Giraffe was that not only does it forecast the P&L for you, but it also forecasts the balance sheet and the cash flow statement all at the same time. And so now I'm delivering to my customers not only a P&L forecast that says, if you do these things, you'll end up with this profit at the end of the year, but I can also show them where their cash gaps are. And just because there's profit at the end of the year doesn't mean that there won't be some cash problems in the middle of the year. And so I would tell you that you don't have to make a switch from one to the other. I would use both and find the best way to use both tools to service those clients and deliver that product that you're looking to deliver.
Great, thank you.
Who was Lotus 1, 2, 3? That was hard to get off of to go to Excel, right? So there can be a plan, but I love that of just like telling them what you can use Excel for, what you can, and eventually people start seeing the power of that as well. So, all right, who else has a question? Got a question back here. Yep.
So I have a question, Michael. You mentioned earlier, this is not a software question, but you mentioned earlier when you were making the switch, you went around to each employee and talked about and asked them, what they enjoy the most, what gets them up in the morning. What did you come across any employees that when they stated what gets them excited, there was no place for them, or there was just like no open place for them in your company? And that there was just maybe that spot was already filled or whatever the case may be. What if there was like two people that really love tech, for example? What did you do? Did you run across that at all? And what did you do to work through that?
We didn't necessarily find anybody who didn't fit completely. We did find some people, actually some of the answers were eye-opening. There were some people that we thought liked to do certain things, and then when we actually asked them the question and communicated with them, realized that they did it as a form of necessity because that's the way that they started at the firm, and nobody had given them the opportunity to do something else because they thought that's what they liked doing. We are at the size firm that the employees that we have are long-term employees, and so in instances where we found kind of overlap, we've tried to figure out the best way to find positions for those employees where they want to be. Obviously, there are going to be instances where we can't fill everybody's desires. We just don't, if somebody wants to do audits, we may not do audits. And so what we've tried to do is just be open and honest with the communication to those employees, find out what they want. One of the main things that's been helpful for us is communicating the firm's vision to those employees so that they understand where the firm is going. What our thoughts are for leadership of the firm and the employee and the staff. And when they understood that, I think they found their fit a little bit better because now they understood kind of what we were thinking as a partner group and how they might fit into that overall plan. And understanding that they still had say in the matter to communicate to us that maybe that's our vision, but maybe they see themselves fitting in a different way than we thought they were fitting in. And so one of the things I've tried to do, and it's not always easy, no matter where you are, whether it's at work or at home, is communication. And I think it goes so much further than oftentimes we even think it does to make sure people understand what our vision is, but also to understand what their vision is and what they want to do.
So many important things that he just said in that. So I want to break a few things down. One is that the partner group came to a combined vision. So if you are in a firm, it cannot be that the partners are each saying different things, or like you walk out of that room, you all have that agreed vision, and then, there's kind of heels in the sand with some partners and they're like, yeah, we're not doing that. So we got to make sure there's a combined vision there. The other thing was actually asking everybody what they like to do and not making the assumption. The biggest problem I see in firms over and over and over again when I go in to consult is the sentence of, well, I would assume they would know, or I assume they like that. It's always this assumption and never communication. What Michael just said, communication is the key to all innovation and all employee happiness and culture. And we've not, we don't need to be scared of communication and what that answer may be. and the fact that they opened their culture up enough where people could say they wanted to do something that maybe is not their job. Now, I'm going to say that from two sides, that they opened it up enough that the employee felt comfortable to say that, and that the partner group didn't say, no, you can't do that. This is what you've always been trained in. That is what I see all the time, of not this letting people do these cross trainings and finding new skills and be able to move through the organization as a matrix instead of a straight line through one department. So those things are really hard. And what I want you to be honest about, Michael, is that combined vision of the partner group.
Mm-hmm.
Is that hard?
Very. Very much.
So how do you go about that?
Redo that last year, and it was something that had to be put out on the table to start. We all came to a unified agreement and vision, and where we've kind of hit a roadblock is implementation. And so now we're going out and using a third party to help us reassess, take that vision concept, take those core values and that purpose, and help us implement it throughout the firm the way that it should be. So it's definitely not an overnight thing. It's definitely a lot harder than it seems. And I think that's probably why a lot of it gets stalled when we try to do these things. And trying to find agreement, I mean, we only have 3 partners, so it shouldn't be too difficult to find agreement in 3 partners. 100 partners, it just gets exponentially harder. So what I'm trying to say is that even at a level that we're at, it's not easy. But the work is worth it, and finding the right people to help you do it. What I realized is that this is not our strong suit as accountants. We do not implement things like this well. We do not even, the fact that we even came to a combined vision was amazing to me. But the next steps are still in process, and it's not an easy process, but it's worth it.
Yeah, it's little steps over time, and going back to celebrate the wins too, because I think we focus on the negatives as we're trying to go through innovation and implementation and what's hard, instead of remembering to go back and saying, look at the wins that we've had along the way, and just boosting it up as well. What other questions do we have in the room? Yeah.
Coming.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna toss it. You ready?
Yeah.
Hey, Michael.
Morning.
So a couple of questions. Did you actually survey your clients before you rolled out the CAS practice? And the second, does this model works better with the industry focus versus just being a generalist?
Mm-hmm. So the first question is, yes, we did service clients before we kind of, what I would call, created a service line. We did it in a way that each partner probably created the engagement process on their own. And so there wasn't a whole lot of standardization, which was a downfall of the process. We did it mostly when clients were in panic mode or crisis mode and needed it. We weren't identifying them proactively to say, maybe you're at the point where you could use this service. So we did service them before. And so we've drawn on some of those experiences, both good and bad, to help us guide this new service line. And remind me of the second question.
Industry focus.
Oh, industry focus, yes. So we recently have really started to put some thought process to industry focus. So I was of the opinion, probably when we started this, that being a generalist was more practical because that's the way our firm is. And so, we have clients in many different industries. We don't have industry niches in our firm. We don't service only, a handful of industries. But recently what I've kind of come to the conclusion by working with Amy and some other folks is that if we want to really be good at this and we want to really dive into it and make this something that is scalable and repeatable, is that we are looking into try to focus in on 3 or 4 industries that we really know a lot about, or we really care about servicing or have experience in. So that's the process our firm is going through right now with the group, is trying to identify what are those industries. And it's the same conversations we had when we brought the people on. My question to them is, what industries do you enjoy servicing? What industries do you find to be the most useful of this service. And so rather than just picking 3 or 4 industries randomly, or picking 3 or 4 that we say we do that a lot, understanding that where this service line fits, as well as what is going to make people want to do it.
Yeah, and where this becomes really, really important is especially when you're doing CFO services, controllership services, is understanding the KPIs of that industry. One of the things that is so powerful about using automation tools like Giraffe and others in this category is bringing the operational and the financial data together. That's when the conversations really shift with clients, because you're understanding what keeps them up at night, what the metrics are for their business. You're talking to operations people, not just financial people. And so when you're talking true KPIs and you talk to other clients that are in that same industry, you're showing this shared knowledge where they're going to, and again, one thing too that I think is important, Michael, is about really understanding that client persona and who you're going after. That client persona is so important, because when you start going down that industry focus, you want them to bring more people like them to you, right? So you want to have clients you enjoy working with. You don't want that ick factor when you see their email come across or their phone number come across their screen. You're like, I don't want to pick that up. So this client persona is very, very important, and that industry niche becomes an even more important factor in being successful in this type of service line. So how did you go about picking that niche?
So at this point, we still haven't kind of drilled down into what that niche is going to be. But what we have done is identified the clients that we feel like we're working the best with, but also finding how we, at the end of the day, I look at this service as you're telling a story. You're helping a client understand financial data and tell them the story of how that financial data interacts with sales, marketing, operations, how it ties their entire business together. So it's just one piece of the puzzle, and being able to kind of understand how they use that data and how they can use it and understand it in a way that maybe they didn't before. And that's what they're looking for us to do.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time today. This has been awesome. And I want to thank everyone that tuned in live, as well as this room, for participating in this conversation. This Breaking Beliefs is all about our journey as humans, right? And there is never a point in our life that we get there. It's really just awareness of understanding where we're at right now, where our work is going forward, and just to keep going on that journey and enjoying it. I want to thank Giraffe for sponsoring this session this morning. And everybody, have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you.
And now for my mindful moments of this episode with Michael Mazza. I hope that you heard how engaged the audience was in this conversation, and also the great insights that Michael shared. Michael talked about how hard the journey is to have a vision and have it be actualized, and convince the people around you and convince the people that you need to help you in that journey that this is a good thing for them and for the practice. All of us have things that we would like to change, but there's a difference between when we want to change and when we actually change, because that takes work, and that also takes commitment, and commitment to a longer term vision. So when we set in front of ourselves a vision and we remind ourselves what that vision is every day, and maybe we put reminders around our workspace, maybe it's a picture, maybe it's a mantra or an intention word, whatever we need to do to remind ourselves to stay on the path each day, that can help us in the times where we're just banging our heads against the wall, that we can't get where we want to go. because we've got either friction or people putting their heels in the sand or getting in the way of change, or just not wanting to change themselves. We might make that decision to change ourselves and to change the way that we work, but we have to allow everyone that space to go through that process to want to change themselves. And honestly, the hard part about change is not everyone is fit for change. That you can try to give them as many resources as you can, as much support as you can. And if they're just still not willing to make that change with you, then there are decisions that sometimes we have to make that are hard. But if we go about this in the right way and we bring the team together, we innovate together, we brainstorm what we could be doing, then we have a shared vision versus just our own vision. And when we create that shared vision and we keep reminding everyone of that shared vision when things are hard, it sure helps when we are going through change and innovation. The other thing that was really important about this interview is Michael talked about how, when we go through change, people have fear because it's something they've never done before, or it's foreign to them. They don't know if they're going to be good at it. And he went through the exercise with them that he went through himself of really defining what his purpose is and understanding that purpose drives us each day. And if our jobs that we do aren't aligned with that purpose, it's very hard to buy into any vision. So that individual work with each person is really important. Understanding what drives them, understanding what makes them excited to come to work each day, what is the value that they are trying to create, and who are they trying to create that for. And then design the roles so that you match up the roles with the right purpose. Not necessarily making every job description exactly the same. They might be called the same thing, but their actual responsibilities may be different based on what drives them to change. The other thing is we heard lots of habits in the room that people struggle with in their own practices as well as Michael's, and one of them was automation and really getting people to allow themselves to trust technology and not spend hours and hours calculating things themselves. And we talked about the difference of calculating in Excel or using a tool like Giraffe or others in this space to be able to bring operational data and financial data together to unlock insights and forecasting and budgeting that might have taken us hours and hours and hours and possibly never be able to bring everything together manually. And now we have these tools to allow us to do that and be able to get to these answers quicker. We rely on our ways of doing things, but sometimes those ways take too long in this day and age, and our clients want answers. And if we're able to get those answers quicker through automation and be able to spend that time with our clients explaining what we're seeing versus just throwing numbers over the fence that they probably don't understand and aren't going to speak up that they don't understand, then the true advisor, the true CFO, the true advisor to a business spends that human time with clients, lets the technology speed up the work so that you can be there to answer their questions, that you can be there to brainstorm different ideas. And that is never going to go away. That relationship piece that humans need and have is so, so important. So hopefully you got that out of today's session, whether it's that human connection we need to create between our teams, between our colleagues, between our vision and what drives everyone's motivation, and the human connection we create when we automate and be able to unlock insights so that we can actually drive the kinds of results that then align back to our purpose. I hope you enjoyed this session. I know I loved doing it live. That was a great new experience, and to see what was resonating with all of you as you listened to it. Again, I want to thank Giraffe for sponsoring this episode, this session in Orlando. And if you want to learn more about them or their accounting firm partner program, you can go to giraffe.com, and it is spelled JIRAV.com. So thank you so much for listening to this episode, for supporting this episode. We'd love to hear your feedback, guests that you might want to hear on, topics that you want to hear. And also, it really helps us when you subscribe to this episode, when you leave testimonials as well, so other people understand the kind of learning that they will get out of this as well. And just remember that the energy that you create for yourself is contagious. And so when we decide to make these changes ourselves, we benefit the people around us. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more, so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.